They laughed at me during my dad's funeral until the will was read out loud and it silenced everyone. My name is Chloe Hayes, and at 31, I never imagined returning home under such painful circumstances. My father, Elias Vance, had just passed away, one of the most respected real estate developers in Savannah. He built Vance and Stone Development from a rundown firm into a multi-million-dollar company. And yet, as I stood at his funeral in my black dress, I felt like a stranger in the pews, judged, whispered about, and absolutely alone. She's only here because she thinks she's getting a cut, I heard someone mutter behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I knew that voice. My Aunt Vivian, who'd always adored my older sister, Serafina, and barely tolerated me. And right on cue, Serafina swept in like she owned the church. Polished, poised, and permanently perfect. She had always been the star, the one who stayed close to Dad, who followed his footsteps into business, who hosted the family dinners and posted about legacy and tradition, like her life depended on it. As she took her seat in the front row next to my dad's lawyer, I stood off to the side. No one saved me a place, not even Serafina. The funeral was exactly what Dad would have wanted, dignified, formal, with hymns, and a slideshow of skyscrapers he'd developed. But as the service unfolded, I noticed something odd. No mention of me. Not in the speech, not in the program, not even in the photo montage. I might as well have been air. Serafina's eulogy sealed the message. My father valued loyalty, she said, voice thick with emotion. He believed in showing up for family and honoring the work he built. Her eyes flicked toward me. Not everyone understood that. By the time we gathered at the church hall for the reception, I felt smaller than ever. I poured myself some coffee, trying to keep my composure when Serafina approached with two cousins flanking her like security. Well, she said with that sweet fake smile she'd mastered since high school. Look who made it. I came to honor Dad, I replied, my voice steady despite the heat in my chest. She laughed quietly. Sure you did. Shame you weren't around when he really needed you. I clenched my jaw. You don't know what you're talking about. No? She raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, you ditched the family, moved to San Francisco to paint, and never looked back. You didn't even call him on his last birthday. That's not true, is it? She leaned in, lowering her voice. You don't get to show up now and pretend you're part of this. You left, Chloe, and honestly, no one missed you. That stung more than I cared to admit. I wanted to say something back, but my voice cracked. You should go, she added. Before tomorrow. What's tomorrow? She smiled again, this time sharper, colder. The will reading. You won't want to stay for that. I stared at her. Why not? Let's just say Dad made his feelings pretty clear before he passed. And trust me, Chloe, he didn't leave anything for someone who disappeared. And with that, she walked away. I stood there trying not to cry in front of people who had already made up their minds about me. I wasn't the devoted daughter. I hadn't stayed. I hadn't gone into real estate. I'd chosen art school, messy studios, abstract expressionism, and a life outside of their bubble. But none of that meant I didn't love my father. None of that meant I didn't try. That night, back at my hotel, I called my best friend, Zara. They think I came back for money, I said, lying on the stiff bed with tears streaming down my face. Then prove them wrong, she said. Go to that will reading. Sit there with your head high. Whatever they think, it's not your truth. I nodded slowly. Even if Dad really did cut me out? Especially then, Zara replied. They don't get to rewrite your story. And I realized she was right. Whatever tomorrow brought, I had to face it, because something in me refused to believe that my father had truly forgotten me. Not completely, not without reason, not unless someone made sure he did. The next morning, the clouds over Savannah hung low, the sky bruised like the heaviness in my chest. I wore a plain black dress and tied my curls back. No makeup, no jewelry, just quiet resolve. I arrived at the offices of Sterling Finch and Associates, the firm that had handled my father's affairs for decades. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt like forever. My palms were slick with sweat, but I kept reminding myself, you have every right to be here. When the elevator doors opened, I was met with polished marble, glass walls, and a cluster of familiar faces gathered in the conference room. Everyone paused when I stepped in. Serafina sat at the head of the long mahogany table, perfectly styled in a navy pants suit, flanked by Uncle Miles and Aunt Vivian. My cousins were all there too, as well as several senior staff from Vance and Stone Development. I counted 15 people total, and every single one of them turned to stare. Chloe, Serafina said smoothly, not standing, Didn't think you'd show? I walked calmly to the one empty chair far from the head of the table, alone again. It's my father's will. Of course I'd be here. The silence that followed was heavy. Serafina gave a clipped smile and said, "Well, let's not waste time." Mr. Finch, my father's longtime attorney, entered a moment later, gray-haired, soft-spoken, but with a presence that commanded the room. He carried a small black briefcase and a tired expression. "Good morning," he said, scanning the room. When his eyes landed on me, something shifted. A brief pause, a nod of recognition. "I'm glad everyone's here." Serafina folded her arms. "Let's move on to the distribution, shall we?" Dad made his wishes very clear. "Yes," Mr. Finch said. "He certainly did. But there's something you all need to see first." He placed a USB drive into a laptop, dimmed the lights, and turned on a small projector. Murmurs rippled through the room. Serafina frowned. "A video?" "Yes," Mr. Finch said firmly. "Your father recorded a personal statement 3 months before his death. He instructed that it be played before any reading of the will." I caught Serafina's expression. Then the confidence cracked just slightly. The screen lit up, and there he was. My father, wearing his charcoal blazer, seated at the desk in his home study. His voice calm and direct. He looked healthier than I remembered from our last call. His silver hair was neat, his tone firm but warm. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm no longer with you. There's a lot I didn't say while I was alive. Too many assumptions, too many mistakes. This message is my attempt to correct that." People around the table sat up straighter. Serafina shifted in her seat. My father continued, "I want to speak to my daughter first. Chloe, if you're here, I hope you know how sorry I am. I let distance grow between us. I questioned your path, and worst of all, I believed things I now know were false." Gasps echoed through the room. "I recently discovered," he said, voice tightening, "that someone in this room worked very hard to keep us apart, to paint you as ungrateful, to make sure I never saw the letters, the birthday cards, the invitations you sent." Head slowly turned toward Serafina, whose face had gone ghost pale. "It wasn't until I began spending more time at home," he went on, "that I found the drawer in the upstairs study, the one hidden behind the filing cabinet. Dozens of envelopes, unopened, all addressed to me, all from Chloe. I confirmed what I feared. Chloe had reached out many times, and someone made sure I never knew. Someone I trusted." Serafina stood up. "This is a lie. He must have been confused." "Sit down," Mr. Finch said sharply. Serafina sat. My father continued on screen, emotion cracking his voice now. "Chloe, I can't get back the years we lost. I can't undo what I believed. But I can say this. I was wrong, and I am proud of you. I followed your art career. I've seen the reviews, the exhibits, the interviews. I even purchased your pieces under another name. You didn't choose the legacy I designed. You built your own." Silence. No one dared speak. Then he turned to the rest of the room. "I know this will disappoint some of you, but my estate must reflect not only love, but integrity. I can't leave the company in the hands of someone who has violated the very values it was built on," he said, now visibly composed. "Which brings me to the terms." Everyone leaned in. "To my eldest daughter, Serafina, I leave a cash inheritance of $300,000 to be distributed over 10 years, contingent upon her compliance with an ongoing ethics review." Several people gasped. "And to my daughter, Chloe, I leave full ownership of my personal home, all its contents, my private investment account, and 51% controlling interest in Vance and Stone Development." I couldn't breathe. "She may choose to take an active role in the company," he added, "or appoint a leadership team she trusts. But my faith is in her judgment, her character, and her future. A new foundation for arts education in Savannah will also be created under her direction, using proceeds from my estate." The room was stunned. Serafina's mouth opened, but no words came. "I hope," my father said on the screen, "that this truth allows healing to begin, that my daughters find their way back to each other. But if not, at least let this be a correction, a realignment of legacy." The screen faded to black, and in that long, loaded silence, I realized that everything had just changed. The silence that followed was suffocating. People fidgeted, cleared throats, shifted in their seats like the room itself had tilted, and they were struggling to find balance. Serafina was still frozen, lips parted, eyes wide, cheeks pale. She blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what had just happened. Uncle Miles was the first to break the silence. Surely there's some misunderstanding. Elias would never hand over the company to an artist. That's what you mean, right? I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. He glanced away. He loved his business. And he trusted me with it, I said simply. Serafina stood suddenly, knocking her chair back. This isn't final. It can't be. Dad wasn't thinking clearly. He was sick. You all saw it. He was exhausted, stressed. He didn't mean any of this. Mr. Finch closed the laptop calmly. Mr. Vance re-recorded this video 3 separate times over the span of 3 months. We have timestamps, medical records confirming mental clarity, and the notarized documentation to go with it. I'll contest it, Serafina snapped, looking around the table. You all know I've been running Vance and Stone development for years. I put in the work. She abandoned us. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The board members' eyes were avoiding hers. Mr. Finch folded his hands. Before you do that, Serafina, you should know that your father also conducted an internal audit. He left behind a sealed report of irregularities tied to contracts approved under your name, some of which may raise serious legal concerns. Her mouth dropped open. You're accusing me of... I'm not accusing you of anything, he said coolly. Your father did, and he left the documentation along with a recommendation for a formal review, which Chloe can decide to pursue, or not, as majority shareholder. I saw the shift then, the panic, the mask cracking. Serafina had spent years controlling everything, narratives, relationships, access, and now she couldn't control this. Not the story, not the company, not me. She slowly sat back down. No one said a word. After the meeting, people began to file out in tense clusters, whispering among themselves. Some gave me tight, uncertain nods. Others avoided eye contact altogether. Serafina brushed past me without a word. Serafina, I called quietly. She turned, jaw tight. I sent you letters, too, I said. Birthday cards, updates. You made sure Dad never saw them. Why? Her eyes narrowed. Because you got to leave. You got to live some dreamer's life while I was stuck here holding everything together. You were always the one he adored. I had to be perfect just to keep up. I blinked. So you punished me for it? I protected what was mine, she hissed. I earned it, and then you just waltzed back in. I walked into my father's funeral, Serafina, I cut in. Not a party. I didn't expect any of this. I came to say goodbye. Her expression hardened. You won't last a year. Maybe, I said. But at least I won't spend it being someone I'm not. And with that, she turned and walked out, heels clicking angrily down the hallway. I sat in the empty conference room for a while after everyone had left. Mr. Finch had offered to walk me through the transition documents the next day. The company, Vance and Stone Development, was now mine to lead or to leave. I'd spent years defining myself outside of Savannah, outside of the family name. But my father had seen me in the end, seen the truth, chosen to right the wrongs before he died. That night, I sat in my hotel room, staring at my reflection in the window. Savannah's lights glowing behind the glass. I'd spent so long believing I had been erased. Now I had a legacy I never asked for, and one I wasn't sure I wanted, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. 2 weeks after the will reading, I officially moved into my father's house. The place felt frozen in time, his slippers still by the study door, a half-used notepad on his desk with notes from a project he never finished. I wandered through each room slowly, carefully. The kitchen still smelled like old coffee grounds. His reading glasses were on the side table by the armchair he always sat in. But it was the upstairs study that hit me hardest. That's where I found the drawer tucked behind the filing cabinet, just like he'd said in the video. Dozens of my letters, my birthday cards, my invitations, all unopened, all kept from him, all addressed in my handwriting. I sat on the floor and read each one, tears slipping down my cheeks. My 25th birthday photo, my first exhibition flyer, the apology note I sent after we argued over art school. All of it had been silenced, buried under Serafina's control, and he'd never stopped loving me. In the days that followed, I met with the executive team of Vance and Stone Development. Some were skeptical, others cautious. But Mr. Finch's presence and the video evidence my father had left behind quieted most of the resistance. I'm not trying to play businesswoman, I said during our first full meeting, but I am my father's daughter, and I won't let what he built be stained by shortcuts or lies. They listened. They leaned in. A few even nodded. I made my first executive decision that week, to initiate a full ethics review of all active construction projects. That included the Ascent Plaza, a flashy riverside development Serafina had boasted about for months. Turns out the building had a long list of issues: cost cutting on safety inspections, non union contractors, and rushed permit approvals. My father had already started investigating it quietly, and I finished what he started. We paused the project, fixed the issues, took the financial hit, but I slept better that night than I had in years. I also launched the Elias Vance Foundation for Arts Education, just like my father had written in his video. I partnered with local schools and started organizing grants and after-school programs for kids who couldn't afford supplies or lessons. Merging art and business wasn't easy. There were late nights, meetings I barely understood, doubts, frustrations. But slowly, something began to shift. People stopped whispering. The staff started asking my opinion. The board listened more. One afternoon, the company's longtime operations manager, Mrs. Thompson, a non-nonsense woman who'd worked with my dad for 22 years, poked her head into my office. "I thought you were just here to collect your check and disappear," she said bluntly. "And now?" I asked. She gave a short smile. "Now I think your father knew exactly what he was doing." That meant more than she realized. Even people from the family started to come around. Cousin Ben sent a text. "Sorry for what I said at the funeral. I see things clearer now." Aunt Vivian stopped by with a box of my old school awards she'd found in the attic. "You always were the creative one," she mumbled, embarrassed. I didn't trust at all. Not right away. I maintained my distance. I'd learned the hard way that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt overnight. But then came a letter, handwritten. No return address. It was from Serafina. It read, "You didn't deserve what I did to you. I just wanted to matter. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you'll forgive me, even if we never speak again." No excuses, no manipulation, just remorse. I folded the letter and put it in the top drawer of my desk. I didn't respond. Not yet. But it meant something. And maybe, just maybe, we were all beginning to unlearn the lies that had defined us for far too long. 6 months after the will was read, I stood at a podium in the heart of Savannah's downtown district, staring out at a crowd of business leaders, artists, students, and reporters. Behind me, the newly completed Ascent Plaza glistened in the sunlight, a symbol of what could happen when integrity and vision worked together. We'd spent months undoing the shortcuts Serafina approved. The cost had been high, but the result was worth it. A safe, sustainable, architecturally striking structure my father would have been proud of. "This building represents more than development," I told the crowd that day. "It represents correction through restoration, legacy, not just inherited, but earned." The applause was steady, real. After the ribbon cutting, I returned to my car and drove across town to a much quieter place, Rose Hill Cemetery, where my father was buried beneath an oak tree that always dropped leaves too early. I brought fresh wildflowers, my mother's favorite, too, and knelt beside his stone. "Hey, Dad," I whispered, brushing leaves off the base of the granite. "The building's done. They even called it one of the most ethical construction sites in the state. Can you believe that?" I paused. "I hope you're proud of me. I've tried to do this the way you would have, and a little bit the way I would, too." A breeze moved through the trees. I pulled out a folded paper from my bag. An invitation to the first exhibition by the Elias Vance Foundation for Arts Education. We were showcasing works from local high schoolers in underfunded districts, their joy, their stories, their raw brilliance. It reminded me of how I'd once felt when I dared to dream beyond Savannah's expectations. "I'm using my share to fund this long term," I said. "Not because I have to, because it matters." I sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. As I got up to leave, I remembered something Mr. Finch had given me weeks ago, a small, leather-bound journal my father had kept in his desk. I hadn't had the courage to read it until recently. Inside were notes, reflections, doubts, regrets, and one particular entry written 3 weeks before his passing. "Chloe sees the world the way I used to when I first started this company. Not for the money, but for the possibility. I was wrong about her. Her strength isn't in being like me. It's in being herself. I just hope I haven't realized it too late." That line stayed with me, not as a wound, but as a thread connecting the past to the present. When I returned to the office the following Monday, there were changes waiting. New partnerships, new faces, and a clearer vision. I hired a small advisory team, one business veteran, one community planner, and one local artist. We weren't just building structures anymore, we were rebuilding values. Some family members remained distant, but others softened. Cousin Grace joined the Arts Foundation board. Uncle Miles apologized at a charity event saying, Turns out your father saw something the rest of us didn't. And Serafina, she sent a second letter, longer this time. Owning what she'd done, she said she was in therapy, trying to unpack the years of resentment and perfectionism that led her to erase me. I wrote back, I don't know if we'll ever be sisters again, but I hope we can one day speak without pain between us. That was enough for now. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I had the truth. I had the company. I had my father's belief in me. Recorded, documented, undeniable. And I had something else, too. A life that blended business and art, structure and soul, legacy and purpose. At the next Foundation Gala, I stood again at the mic, surrounded by young artists and donors and volunteers. I looked out at the faces in the crowd, some familiar, some brand new, and said, sometimes the stories people write about you are loud, cruel, and convincing. But the truth has a way of surviving. And when it finally speaks, when it finally shows up, even if it comes too late, it can still change everything. The room fell quiet. Then the applause came, and I realized I wasn't the lost daughter anymore. I was the woman who came back, told the truth, and built something better for my father, for myself, for everyone who'd ever been erased, and dared to rise anyway. Hi, besties. If this story moved you, or reminded you of how truth always finds a way, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been misunderstood by your own family only to be proven right in the end? If you believe in standing for what's right, for healing through truth, and for rewriting your own story, then please support this channel. Like this video, subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories. And if you'd like to help us keep sharing stories like this, consider sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth always speaks loudest.